Hey, good morning, everybody. This morning I had one of those too many thoughts to share for a post. And I know my posts are already long, so I wanted to take the time and do a live and share some of my thoughts with you regarding the transition, whether that's the transition from the military when you're still active, or whether you've been out and trying to figure out from a career pivot standpoint where you go next. So to start off, if you're joining me this morning, why don't you go ahead and add in where you're coming from? And if you're still serving, add your branch of service. All right, so let's talk about this. I talk to so many transitioning service members and veterans. This is my passion. This is my life. And I will share with people, if you're lucky enough to figure out what's next, where your work aligns with your passion, it becomes less like work, right? So my work-life balance is balance, right? Because I work all the time, but I'm doing what I love and I'm having an impact. So I want to share that with all of you. So the idea is, how do you find that role that is aligned with your passion, that is something you enjoy doing enough that it isn't a life suck, meaning you're going to go in every day to work and hate it, and that it also meets your requirements from a financial standpoint and really gives you the growth you want for a career. So that's the challenge. And I will tell you that for a lot of military retirees, that is the biggest challenge there is, because you don't know what you don't know, right? And so you start to do the searches like I did when I started. I started looking for jobs. And when I would go, I'd go down to this rabbit hole for hours on Indeed, Monster, LinkedIn, and I'd actually spend hours searching jobs. And I'd go in searching for like vice president or director or, senior manager. I'd look for all these executive level roles, but what I wasn't doing is I wasn't looking for jobs. I wasn't looking at roles of what jobs I would be doing. I was looking at titles. And so that's the first thing I would say to people is, when you look at your transition, when you go to the job boards early on, hopefully not in the last couple months, and you're searching for what you want to do next, what words do you type into that job board? Are you typing titles because you're still focused on a lateral transition of title from what you do or did in the military? Or are you actually looking at job functions because you know what you want to do, right? So that's the hardest part of the transition, is to realize you have to get away from title. You have to get away from leadership, because leadership as a focus is a part of every job. Right? It's a responsibility we bring to take care of those that work for us, around us, and sometimes even above us, because we have to, influence others. And it just carries over into the private sector, but it isn't the sole focus of why we're going to hire you. We're hiring you to do jobs, right? To do something, to drive revenue, to make a better workforce, or whatever it is, right? So you've got to figure that out. Now, that's the first thing when I talk to a transitioning service member or a veteran that's really having a hard time, and our military spouse community is, I ask them, what do you want to do? And I get these decisions or these answers that are all over the place. Either it's all focused on leadership, or it's, I want to be a program manager, or I want to be a project manager. I say, what industry? And they're like, well, I just want to lead projects, which is just like saying I want to be a leader. Or they say, I want to go into operations. And I'm like, what does operations mean to you? And they're like, well, it's like being in a 3 shop. You're orchestrating, you're running orders. I'm like, no, that's not it either, right? So I tell them, you kind of have to decide what you want to do. And more often than not, when I have that first conversation with people, I get this answer, ready? But I don't want to paint myself in a box, which basically means I don't want to make a decision. And that's a challenge, right? Because what you're doing is you're hamstringing yourself from how you're presenting yourself outward as a professional, how you reflect to employers that are looking at you to do certain things. And you're not really learning how to come across more as a person in that job. And so what I want to tell people is, you have to get to a point where you make a choice, right? And it's hard. And yes, you are kind of painting yourself into a box. But this world is full of choices. And the great thing about it is, if you make a choice and you choose wrong, you just change. You go find another job. You do something different when you get out. But what I see is a lot of people in the transition get so scared, get so overwhelmed by the choices that they fail to choose. And they just become generalists and they hope that somebody finds them and gives them the great opportunity. And that starts a downward cycle, a downward spiral of unhappiness and what's next. So how do we choose, right? I mean, honestly, how do you figure out what somebody in HR really does? I mean, it's not battlefield circulation and kumbaya, right? It's not just evals. That's not HR in the private sector. There's so much more. So how do you find out if you want to do HR or if you're a good fit for HR? I mean, it's simple. You talk to a lot of people that are in HR, and I will tell you that there are a lot of veterans out there. There are mentors out there that will work with you on it, right? You could reach out to mentors that have made the transition at HR, either directly from the military or otherwise, and just ask for some advice. Ask them how they did it. Ask them what they do, right? And I'll go into it. I'll try to go into it a little later about how you do it. But simply, all you have to do is go search for HR in the search bar on LinkedIn, right? Click people, that you're looking for people with HR in the title, and then slide over at the top to all filters and go down to past company. You're looking for people that past company, and then add your branch of service, U.S. Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, Space Force. Add them in there, and what it'll do is it'll populate a whole bunch of people that served that are in those roles. And then you can even filter by company. If you want to work in Google, you can look for Google, click on employees, and go down to past company and look for service members, right? Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, Coast Guard, Space Force. And then you reach out to them and talk to them. So, I want to talk to people about this because you really need to spend the time talking to professionals in your fields that interest you to find out what you want to do next. You need to ask them what they do, what their day's like, what they don't like, how many meetings there are, is there travel involved, what challenge did they have to overcome, how they related their military experience to their private sector roles, right? All of these things come together, but the more conversations you have, the more you narrow down what you want and don't want to do. And every conversation, you learn new terminology, you get new advice, and you start to sound more like them. So if you have 10 conversations with, an IT project manager, I mean, gosh, you're going to start sounding like an IT project manager way more than you did before you started those conversations. So when you talk to recruiters, when you talk to hiring managers, you're focusing on the right tasks, the right accomplishments, the right skills, and you're using the right terminology. So it's this iterative process where the more conversations you have, the more likely you are to find success in those roles. And you just have to break the ice. So you can send out, you're not limited. You could send out 20 requests to veterans or people in roles that interest you and ask for a phone call. And maybe you get 5, 7, 8, 9, 10 responses that say yes. And then you just follow up and have them. Maybe you get one response that says yes, but you know what? All you need is one answer, one mentor, one person that invests in you to change your life. That's what happened to me. I sent out a bunch. And Dan Savage, when I sent him an article I wrote, got on a phone call with me. Changed my life completely. So I'm going to encourage you to just be resilient and start sending those out. So the next part, when we talk about our profiles, I encourage people to tailor your profile to the job that you want to do, right? And the same thing goes for resumes. Now, I will tell you, I looked at a bunch of resumes this week. My company's placing people, hire military. You can go to hire military jobs. You'll see a bunch of them. You can go to Tnova LLC careers and see a bunch of them. We've got some amazing careers from the, consulting roles in the Big Four down to this incredible job where you're setting up power for ESPN and all these concerts and traveling and making money and enjoying this incredible mission. So they're all there. The thing is I want to give you some advice about profiles. And I want to give you some advice about resumes because they're kind of interlinked in some ways. For your profiles, until you kind of narrow it down to what you want to do and what skills and experience you have aligned to that field, it's okay to just make it your professional identity, to make it you. So if you're a senior master sergeant in the Air Force, it's okay, and your job is superintendent of whatever or whatever the job is, it's okay to put that in your headline. It's okay to put it in your, describe your experience in the about section. It's okay to put it as it is now in your experience section, right? You don't need to translate everything until you know what you want to do. A lot of people get so focused on your profiles and translating everything that it gets confusing. And it doesn't look right. It looks off to people in the veterans and non-veterans. I will tell you, I have looked at resumes and profiles of transitioning service members and scratched my head after 24 years in the Army and said, I have no idea. I don't know what they did. I don't know what rank they were, what level of experience. Everything was made in such generalities that I couldn't really determine what kind of, skills and experience they were going to bring to my company or to the companies we were going to share them with. And then the resumes themselves, I reviewed resumes with Lucy Robinson this week, and I looked at one. I'm like, oh my God, like this guy should be great, I think, but his resume is horrible. And she goes, he was our best candidate. I said, okay, stop. So let me be clear. People get too cute. And I did this as well on our resumes, on our professional summary. A lot of times when we tailor resumes, we kind of tailor stuff in the bottom, or we tailor job accomplishments, and we don't realize the first thing we do is look at page one. And if there's a professional summary, read that. Look at the degree. Make sure you meet all the qualifications. So one of my pieces of advice, and I read a lot of resumes. What I like to see is right up at the top. Like if that job requires X number of years of defense financial management experience or X number of years of working on this platform or X, like don't overthink it. Just put in the professional summary at the top, like you have this many years of experience doing it, right? You have a master's degree, you have a bachelor's degree and whatever, like make sure it's like smack you in the face at the top. I have these qualifications. And then just make sure in your experience section that you show that, there should be accomplishments aligned to that. You don't have to overthink this. And if you do that, you pop as someone that has all the qualifications. And if it's written well, you're going to stand out to recruiters. Now, the challenge is, what if you're not sure? Or what if you don't know how to write it? And that's where I'm going to tell you, a lot of people reach out to me and say, can you refer me to a resume writer, or can you refer me to a career coach? And I don't like to refer service members to paid resources, right? I think there's enough nonprofits out there that will help you. So what I'm going to share with you all is, I will tell them instead to get on LinkedIn and reach out to veterans in the fields that interest you and ask them for advice. Don't ask them to review your resume day one, right? It's a lot of time investment. If I'm not going to get on a call with you, I'm certainly not going to spend hours on your resume. But if I get on a call with you and we connect and I see you're sharp and I see you're willing to put in the effort, and I won't get on a call with you unless I've seen the effort on your profile, your engagement, and everything else like that. If I get on a phone call with you, or if anybody gets on a phone call with you and there's a connection, there's a much better chance that they'll take a look at your resume and they'll probably offer it. And so what I want to share with you is, reach out to people in the fields that interest you. Find this group of mentors that should be helping you shape it. And then ask them for advice about resumes. Ask them for advice about profiles. Leverage people that work in the field for support before going to a generalist. I mean, I just don't know how a professional resume writer is going to translate your knowledge, skills, and abilities, your experience in a way that truly stands out for a highly technical role. that they never held. I mean, they could do it kind of, but nothing's going to beat having a hiring manager look at your resume and say, yeah, I'm missing this, or you should add some things about this, or, you should change this around. Like, yes, they can put it in a great format. Yes, they can make it read well. Yes, they can make it, bullet accomplishments that are accomplishments, not just what your job was. But, I just have a hard time understanding how some resume writers, and some do it, and they do it way better than some of us do. So you'll figure it out for yourself. But I would not go to a resume writer until you've spoken with mentors in those fields and they've helped you translate what's on your evals, what's on your awards, what's in your experience into things that resonate with that field, and you're going for the right level. So that's that's a bunch of this. I mean, I think I just went on a stream of consciousness there. There is, I think, as I start to end, I'll take some questions. So let me see if I'm doing it myself today. So, you can drop me a few questions. I'll take some. So there, as I lead into questions, there is no right way to transition. I will tell you, what I tell people to do will not work for everyone. And all these programs out there won't work for everyone. And every nonprofit out there won't work for everyone. There's no right way, right? Because people have different interests. People have different abilities. People have different comfort levels. And people have different goals, right? So, I have trouble with this assumption that we've owned it, we've fixed it, we've done whatever. My number one advice when it comes to the transition is own your transition, network your behind off, go find mentors that relate to you, get out of your comfort zone, and just have it conversation after conversation after conversation until you figure out what you want to do and have a supportive network that's saying, hey, I've got something for you. That's my method. Some people will never get through their own internal roadblocks to make that. Some people just want to set a profile up and hope somebody finds them because they don't feel comfortable asking. And for them, my system's not going to work. They've got to get out. They got to get through those walls, those internal barriers. And so for them, there may be some other structured programs where, people work you through all these exercises and they do all these strength finders and everything else like that to figure out what's going to align them best. And they start to kind of point them. And there's programs out there that'll find mentors for you. There's programs out there that'll, have networking events and everything else like that. So, some people might need that structure. And so what I'm going to tell you is that there is no right way. Try everything. Sign up for every program and find the ones that work best for you, right? And so I'd say I'm going to go through these questions in a second, but for those of you that are here right now, if there's a nonprofit that's worked well for you, please add that in a comment, right? The name of the nonprofit. That way people get some ideas. Let me see what questions we have. And the last part is, okay, so we get overwhelmed with choices. We get overwhelmed with options. We don't know what we don't know. And so I want you to understand that this is not, the transition does not end when you get your first job. The transition is life, right? And so, you get that first job and you decide down the road that wasn't what you want to do. Oh, you change jobs. What if you get that job and 1 month later you get a better job offer? Well, you have a discussion with your family, you decide whether that really is a better offer, and then you take the offer if you want. I mean, you're not stuck wherever you go. You have these options throughout life. And so, at some point, I encourage you to do the research necessary to make a choice and then reflect yourself as a professional in your chosen field and get after it. I took me 8 months of conversations to make my choice to go to ProSphere as a director of workforce management. And I had over 200 conversations during that time and realized I wanted to be an HR consultant, not HR, because I was missing employment law, labor law. I was missing benefits and compensation. And honestly, I didn't want the focus of my job to make sure the company doesn't get sued. Whereas a director of workforce management, my job was to run training programs, build training programs, manage workforce development, morale, standards, SOPs, everything else for a company that went from 200 to 500 people pretty much overnight. And I loved that aspect. But 8 months in, I outgrew the role. I already did the things that I could do. And I was struggling because the company wasn't willing to make some of the hard choices necessary to do things they needed to do to get to where I believed they needed to be. And I was kind of spinning my wheels. And I couldn't get the support at the level I was. And there wasn't room for growth to a higher level where I could kind of influence change much, much easier. I engaged my network. I started talking to people about opportunities. I reached out to mentors, including one at EY. And 4 months later, I started as a senior manager at EY, HR consulting, people advisory services. And I stayed past a year, which was my promise to the CEO of the company that I was going to get the things done that I did. And I left in a really good position, and my career pivoted as a result. And so that's what I'm going to tell you all is that, make your best choice. Don't get scared of it. Don't fear it. Go out and put the work in, own it, make a choice. And if you choose wrong, change. That's life. I just encourage you to network consistently, even when you've gotten that first job. Don't walk away from LinkedIn. Don't leave your network behind until you're looking for a job a year later and no one's heard from you. That tells us something. You're only there when you need something. Continue to network consistently. It doesn't have to be a time suck, but stay engaged. Drop a post every once in a while so that your network stays updated on you. Drop a comment, maybe a couple comments a day, maybe connect with a few new people, connect with people in your company, and everything will continue to grow. So when you need your network, it's there. All right, let me go to some of these questions. Great. We're hearing some great programs. Let me move up here and see. Ooh, what advice do I have for military spouses? Okay, so thank you, Rosalind. And absolutely, I appreciate you joining me. I remember you. So let's talk about military spouses. I think the biggest challenge is that, first of all, military spouses are the most economically disadvantaged group in the United States. During COVID, reached up to 35% unemployment. No one else was impacted like that. And a lot of that is because they were already at 24%, and a lot of the roles around bases were hospitality bases. The hospitality roles had closed down. But now that we've moved to hybrid roles for a lot of companies, a lot more open to remote roles, this should go down, because I will tell you that, my best performers in my company, in fact, I've got another military spouse starting on Monday. My rock stars, every military spouse I've hired has been an absolute out of the mind rock star. And they've all had non-traditional resumes. So I think that if they'd applied their resumes, I'm certain they had, to other companies, they didn't jump out as a top candidate because their resume didn't read as a traditional someone that's been doing that job that long, for years. But I saw it in a conversation. My team saw it in conversations, and they've been, we gave them great roles and they've run with it. So my advice for military spouses is, if your resume doesn't read like someone that's an expert in that field, that has the exact number of years experience, everything else like that, then you really need to focus on the conversations, right? You need to network with veterans, network with military spouses. You could search for both on LinkedIn and start having conversations on what's next. And, honestly, we're not allowed to ask if you're a military spouse. It doesn't matter if you're a military spouse. So if it's a company that you're not sure, you have to decide whether you want to disclose that or not. Because I know that discrimination exists. But if you're having conversations with people in, different companies, different fields, and the remote roles, it shouldn't matter. So have those conversations, ask your mentors how you should reflect it. And then once you've got that, focus on building your profile and resume to show how you're a great fit for those roles. You don't have to put volunteer experience in the volunteer section. It can fit in the experience section. You can, when you tell someone why you'd be a great recruiting manager or HR manager or whatever, whatever you tell them should be reflected in your about section. You talk about the things that resonate with someone. But ultimately, I would say, really focus on the networking piece and understand that it's a job seekers market right now. Everyone's hiring. So just make sure that you're out there engaging and you can confidently talk about what you bring to a team. Let's see. I'm looking, I don't have that many questions, but I do have a lot of hiring. I have a lot of, I see someone somebody just said, stay genuine, right? Let's see. I'm going to look for it. So David said, keep rank vocabulary to your military circles. Civilian world doesn't care that people call you chief. Yeah, I would agree. But I think that if you're talking to a veteran, there's a point in time where you can discuss what you're doing or what you've done in the military that gives them additional context with helping you, be where you need to be. So you're going to have to adjust to each individual, how you communicate, how much knowledge they have, how much they want. I've actually told people like, hey, okay, they know I'm a sergeant major or I'm a retired sergeant major. They go, write it up. You're a retired sergeant major. I don't have to translate stuff. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. No, I want to know that you can. So don't just talk to me in, military vocabulary. And once I've seen it, sometimes I'll ask more questions that they can delve into the day-to-day. So I don't think there's a right way to have these conversations. It's just, you can't assume that everybody has the knowledge. And to be honest, I did 24 years in the military. I had multiple joint assignments, and I still don't understand half of what the Navy does. I mean, it's just, I don't, different ranks, different jobs, different titles. I just learned last week what a chit is, which sounds weird to me. So let's see what we got here. We've got, I guess, let me see. I don't have many questions. So this is great. I'm looking through. Oh, here we go. Scott says, do you see remote work opportunities increasing, or is it a fad because of COVID? This may impact our decision on where to live. That's a great question, Scott. And, honestly, I don't know the answer to that right now. We're in such a fluid environment. But what I will say is that it's definitely something, as you're having conversations with mentors, you should talk to them about what their remote policies are for their companies. So a lot of companies were expecting to be in the office this month. I knew that like some of the big four were planning, 6 months ago, September's after Labor Days when we're going to plan. And then, that shifted. I know some of the big companies said, no, we're going to have everybody in the office. And then that's changed as well. I remember talking to people on Amazon Web Services that were talking about their policy, how they were, and others have left it up to smaller units. So I think we're still in a place where nobody knows, but these are conversations that you should have with mentors or with people that are talking to you about roles to learn more about their company culture. Because there are companies that have that. I mean, let's be honest. This is Mike Quinn talking. Unless you are customer facing, meaning you have a storefront, or unless you are customer facing, meaning you are supporting a contract that requires you to be on site, I don't know how a lot of these roles have to have you there unless it's just someone seeing you being there so they feel comfortable you're doing your job. So my entire company is remote. And we have flexible hours because we've built in a system where we communicate effectively, based on results, whether or not someone's doing their job. And as a result, my team actually probably works harder than if I required them to be there 9 to 5. But I think you're going to have those conversations, Scott. I mean, it's a really great question. The other thing I would say is I'm interested to see how salaries start to normalize. I see it now. I talked about this a year ago. We're paying people high salaries in the DC area. We're paying people high salaries in New York City, Boston, Seattle, LA, you name it, Austin, right? And people want to be paid those same salaries, even though they move, right? So I was getting paid a New York City salary, say, and I moved to a rural area, well, I still want to get paid that New York City salary. My salary shouldn't go down if I move, right? Well, I think that what's going to happen is companies are going to say, yeah, sure. But at some point, companies are going to stop paying premium salaries because they go to these remote roles and they can get the same talent elsewhere at a cheaper price. So you're going to have somebody in rural Kansas that has the same qualifications, same ability, can do the same job as you in New York City, and they say they're going to do it, and they're going to do it for $50,000 a year less. Who are they going to hire? Like, I see us going to this point where these remote roles are going to kind of normalize from an employer standpoint as well. And so it's such an incredibly, it's a scary time, but I think it's a really exciting time for companies to kind of lean forward from an HR perspective, from a leadership perspective, and really attract incredible talent and have policies that enable you to be flexible and access a greater workforce. I mean, my God, Scott, you've taken me on a sideways note, but what about when that normalizes outside of your country and you start accessing talent around the world? Like, I see where this is going down the road, and it excites me. It doesn't scare me. But yeah, I think, ultimately you've got to choose where you want to live, and that decision should be based on where you want to be. There's a lot of factors involved in that. And then, be willing to change if the right opportunity comes up or not, right? I know Dan Allen, fantastic leader, former vice chief of staff for the Army, works out at EY's government and public sector. He works out of the Tyson's office. He still lives in the Fayetteville area. So, North Carolina, I don't think he's on the water somewhere. And he comes up when he needs to. But a lot of his work can be done remotely or he travels. And he's been incredibly successful. And the firm is willing to make those considerations for someone like him that's bringing in the right opportunities. So I think a lot of this is just conversations you're going to have. And, honestly, before you accept a job, you have to have these conversations with potential employers. My first company, the CEO prior to COVID was like, everyone needs to be in the office every day. And some people had negotiated telework in their contracts, a couple days a week. And so I had to go back to him and say, look, it's in their contract. And he had to accept that. And it's because people were smart enough to ask those questions. All right. I'm at 33 minutes. So I see, Quentin, you said you're looking at EY for some cyber roles. I would let you know that Lucy Robinson and Kate Wood are recruiting right now for some cyber roles in the Big Four, right? With EY's part of the Big Four. And so you should consider that because we're presenting candidates directly to recruiters that are recruiting for those. So if you go to Tenova LLC Careers, our careers page, or if you go to Hire Military, the jobs portal, you'll be able to look at those technology risks, those cybersecurity roles, the cyber roles that are out there, and we'll help you with that. Let's see if there's any question. Here we go. I saw a post of yours where you cautioned folks from saying thanks from joining my network. How do you feel about thanks for combining our networks? I would say get past your ego. I don't know who you are, LinkedIn user, but I mean, why do you have such a problem with expressing humility and being humble and asking to join somebody else's network? Like, what is causing this issue that you can't just say, I'd like to join your network, right? Or I'd like to join your professional network. Why are you fighting this, thinking, why do you have to own this process? So this is great. I will share that one of the biggest challenges that veterans have and transitioning service members have is ego. And we've got to get beyond that. We've got to be humble. Dan Allen, retired 4-star general, one of the most humble leaders I've ever met. Scott Stalker, senior enlisted leader for Space Force, former senior enlisted leader for NSA Cyber Command, and you guys should all connect with him. Again, a humble leader that actually talks to people and, more importantly, listens. So what I'm going to say is, honestly, if you are asking to connect with someone else, you should feel humble and ask to join their network. And if you have such a hard time doing that, if you have to make it equal, if you have to make it, hey, I want you to join my network, I think you have to look deeper into yourself and ask why. Why does it have to be my network? Why do I have to be asking you to join mine? Why does it have to be about combining? Why can't I just be humble and say, I want to ask to join yours, no matter who they are? And I think that's a huge part of this transition. And you know, it's not about, I see you saying here, it's more about show we are providing value. Look, you're making an ask, right? The ask isn't providing value. The ask is being humble to join, right? And you provide value in the conversation. You provide value down the road. You provide value. Go look at your network and see whether you are providing value or not, or if the potential is there. So I've got another one. Jorge or George is saying, what's your thoughts on a master resume? I continue to build on mine, but sometimes I feel like it's too much. So great question. I would say that you need a master resume, right? Your master resume is like as many pages as you need, and it's all your accomplishments that are all lined up. So as you're transitioning, I tell people to definitely build a master resume, and you know, which is basically all the bulletized accomplishments for each job going back as far as you want to go. And the beauty about a master resume is you can always, when someone says, send me your resume, well, number one, it means you don't send it right away. You can talk about what role it is. You can look at what type of company it is, and you can tailor that resume by just copying and pasting bullets out of your resume into the Word document, the PDF document that you're going to send off to that, you know, recruiter, that hiring manager, whomever. So I believe master resumes are great. You can just really put all of it in there and not worry about staying to that 1 to 2 page standard. And it makes it much easier down the road. So I do tell you to work on it. Now, if you are a transitioning service member and you're not sure what you want to do next, you can make LinkedIn your master resume. Whereas you define your experience, you put all those bullets in there, and what that's going to do is it's going to make you populate more on keyword searches, recruiter searches, right? Because they're going to have more content. You give the recruiters more to look at and see if you might be a great fit for a different role, right? Or they can get more detail into what you've done and do that from looking, right? The only thing I would differentiate is I typically, if you are looking at executive level roles, you don't have to go the master resume route. You can just do a short paragraph there. Just something to think about. And if you're not sure what I mean, you can go to my profile, scroll down to my military roles. I left them how they were. And you can see I put all the bullets down there to help with keyword searches, to help with how I rank, and to help give content and context to the people that were looking at my profile. Great question, Jorge. But remember, ultimately, when you send a resume for a job, when you apply online, don't overthink it. The most important thing is to show right up the front, like slap you in the face, I have the knowledge, experience, and skills that are in the job description required for this job, right? It should be completely obvious you meet the criteria for the job. Then you go into the rest. If you're applying for an HR job, I don't care that you were signed for $12 million equipment. I don't care that you led 48 people. I care about, do you have the skills and experience and the education that were highlighted in the job first? And then the extra stuff helps differentiate you, right? And that's the challenge we all face. Okay, let's see. Any other questions before I go? When it comes to recruiters sifting through resume, here we go. When it comes to a recruiter sifting through resumes, do you feel that the format, layout, and keywords are more important than the actual content? No, I think that there's not a more important. I looked at a whole bunch of resumes for those big 4 roles, and these are, incredible, life-changing opportunities with Lucy Robinson, who's amazing at this. By the way, can somebody tag Lucy in here so that Lucy Robinson, she's our recruiting manager, so that everybody, all of you should connect with her. She's amazing. Military spouse, knowledge. I love talking to her. So we went through a bunch of resumes because I was a senior manager in the Big Four. And I will be honest, one of the resumes that I thought was the worst, and they were all, she'd already looked at them, was the worst because it was so jarbled in format that I had to really read into it to really understand how they were qualified, what experience they had. They made it a little harder. Now, still, it was tailored enough that I could see that they would be a great fit, but I could also see how there would be some challenges. I remember their about section was like all unrelated stuff. 20 plus years of doing blah, 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 a lot of fluff, a lot of adjectives. So I think that, it's important from a format perspective to make it easy to read. But again, I think the most important thing is focusing on showing them right up front, focus, I was looking, one role required X years of defense financial management experience. And I went through their jobs and I'm like, I don't see dollar signs roles that align with manage this budget, responsible for this many dollars worth of equipment. I think it should be jump off the page clear that you accomplish those in the roles. I don't see those in the summary of what the roles were. It's not obvious that you did those things. They need to add those. I knew they did, but it just needs to be there. So I think, really focus on making it easily read. And if you're going to put a professional summary, tailor that professional summary, project management, PMI certified project manager with X number of years managing these projects, a secret clearance, bachelor's degree, exactly what they asked for in the titles. And then the rest of the stuff will all work itself out. I don't think there's a right way to do resumes. Every resume looks at them differently. I saw one pagers that were amazing, that had exactly what I needed, and they were formatted a little differently, but I can see, I was like, they're great. And I saw two pagers that had too much, but we still kind of read into them. Now, the thing about this is my company is a staffing firm. We're a third party. Companies hire us to bring veterans and service members, transitioning services, and military spouses to them. So we're going to spend a little bit more time on the candidates. But from the corporate perspective, the recruiters are going through and they're going to focus first on the ones that tailored it exactly to those roles. And so some of these candidates probably would not have made it through, a direct applied to these companies because they weren't able to translate it in a way that recruiters could understand. So again, I go back to, there's no right answer. You could talk to 6 recruiters that'll all give you 6 different pieces of advice from the 6 resume writers, right? Ultimately, you're never going to get it perfect for how everybody else does. You got to get it the best for how you feel comfortable, and then leverage mentors. And ultimately, no matter what your resume says, if somebody in that company refers you, more often than not, it's going to at least get you a look from a recruiter. What are your thoughts on advertising yourself as open for work on LinkedIn when they are point of permissive TDY and terminal leave? Mark, this is a great question. And there's different answers. So Mark, as someone at the lieutenant general level, at the 3-star level, it's tough. I will say that I've talked to retained search consultants that are, hired from companies to find executives or C-suite members of a team, and that they've had trouble. They've told me, we can't present candidates that are saying open to work to our clients because it shows that at the executive level, either they're not happy what they're doing, that they don't have the network to support it, or that they don't have the job. And, they're getting paid big dollars to really go out there and find incredible candidates that are employed by other companies. I mean, ultimately, if you're not hired yet, there's always that question, why? And so there's a challenge there when you talk about at the C-suite. If you talk about at the executive level, there's a balance you've got to find there. Now, at the manager level and below, I think that saying open to work, and you can go onto your LinkedIn profile on your homepage, click the open to and say work, finding a new job, totally fine to put that on there and make it public, all LinkedIn members, so you get that green banner. I mean, I see people commenting on my posts. I see that green banner and we've got jobs, like I'll tag Lucy, I'll tag Kate and say, hey, you should reach out. We've got some great jobs for you, where I would not have done that if I'd seen that banner, right? So there's a balance there. You can always you can always go to LinkedIn, and you can always go to open to finding a new job and make it only recruiters, and it won't give you that banner, and it will tell recruiters that you're open. But honestly, so number one, hey, everyone, you should reach out and Mark and connect with them. If you're a recruiter on his feed, please reach out and talk to him. But Mark, honestly, if you start sharing content like photos of events you're attending or attended, articles that your public affairs have already posted, and that you share those with what your role was, your decisions make. You share retirement ceremonies, visits, thoughts on leadership, whatever. You don't have to go crazy, but as you start to post, what you'll see is that your network will grow exponentially, because you've had such an incredible impact on people throughout your career. And those opportunities will start to come to you. And then let me tell you, just about any executive out there that sees Lieutenant General, when you send a request, if they're active on LinkedIn, I don't know who wouldn't want to talk to a Lieutenant General. And in fact, Mark, send me a note. I'm happy to, I think I told you guys all this in the transition course. Send me a note. And I'm happy to get on a phone call with you and make some introductions to people in my network. I mean, you've spent 30 plus years leading our nation's soldiers. The least I can do is pay it forward and help you find something and connect you. So happy to help with that. I see people tagged Lucy. Thank you. Absolutely. And there you go. How far back should a resume cover? Great question, Carol. A resume should go back as far as the amount of experience needed to cover that role, right? So I see if you're looking at a job description and it says 5 years of experience in HR management or 5 years of experience in training management, then you need to go back far enough to show that you have those 5 years, right? If it's your last 5 jobs, great. If it takes 7 years or 8 years, great. Just make sure it's clear, jump off the page, clear that you have those 5 years of experience, right? Where I see a lot of service members, transitioning service members and veterans have trouble is the military is very time in service oriented and very rank oriented. We're proud that we spent 20 years, that we have 25 or 30 years. And we look at our career in the military as experience, right? But it's not the same. I have 24 years of experience in the military industry, in the defense industry. I don't have 24 years of experience doing HR consulting. And so you've got to tell that story that shows how you're the best candidate for a role. So I think the resume needs to go back only as far enough to show that you meet all the criteria and a best candidate for that role. If you've got space and you want to add a couple other jobs that kind of give you value, add value that you believe, that's fine. But definitely you don't need to list everything. And it's the same for a profile. I have people go back 20 plus years. I'm like, no, stop. You don't need to go back that far. Only go back as far to show the experience you need for those roles. Let's see. Here, let's see. I don't see. Yeah, I mean, so Brandon says he was taught that we should add other jobs as well to add depth. I mean, sure. At some point it doesn't hurt, but none of it matters until you first show that you are the best candidate for those roles, right? You've got to show that you can meet the requirements for those roles, right? Period. That's the first thing. Then the other things can add value. Let me share another thing with you. I hear a lot of people saying we should hire service members or veterans or military spouses for all the soft skills, the leadership, the flexibility, the adaptability, mission focus, blah, 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 right? None of that comes out till you get to the interview. So I'm going to tell you that the number one thing on your resume should be hard skill qualifications, experience, accomplishments. That's what gets you to the interview. Network and or the hard skill accomplishments, the experience, the detailed activities that meet the requirements for the role get you to the interview. And then when you get to the interview, that's where the soft skills, that's where all the depth, the extra stuff blows people away and makes you stand out above the other, 3 to 5 candidates. Is education required, negotiable based on years of experience? It depends. For most government contracts, absolutely not. Like there's a hard requirement for an experience. Like they can ask for waivers, but not. I will tell you, in my experience, you hear a lot of companies saying that they're moving to more to certification-based experience, everything else like that. Look, the bachelor's degree of today is the high school diploma of my younger years. And so at the very least, I tell everyone, if you want to be a manager above, you need that bachelor's degrees. Yeah, you can go to the Steve Jobs examples and all that other stuff. There's always going to be exceptions to the rules, but they invented, these incredible computers or programs or systems or whatever. So, I'm going to say it depends. And if you're in the IT world, yeah, some of those certs matter, but ultimately you're going to get a point in your career where you're not going to be able to go further because there's going to be people you're competing with that have the certs and the degree to stand out. So I think you really need to have conversations with mentors and decide. I will share that, like I have great companies. One of the jobs we just posted on the Tenova LLC careers page and the higher military jobs page is an event technician setting up power for all these outdoor events. And you get to go watch, set up and support ESPN, college football, NFL, Live Nation, Garth Brooks, all these other companies. It got me really excited because the employer was like, hey, we're going to train you. And there's no degree requirement to progress up through the ranks and make like well into the six figures pretty quickly. So there are great employers that do that. They're just not all out there. So you're going to have, think about it. Let's see. All right. For IT, yeah, here we go. Quentin says for IT, you will need a degree with the certs. Yeah. I mean, look, you can get, I talked to a Marine Sergeant Major, really did something right. I think he did this legislative liaison piece, and he turned that into a fantastic role. And he didn't have a degree, and he got a role doing these legislative liaison. This what's the word when you work in the government to kind of help create opportunities, in Congress and everything. So he did a great job doing all of this stuff. And the company changed its focus. They downsized over COVID, and his section was let go. And so he had this huge job where he was probably making close to $200K a year. And he got out and didn't have a degree. And 6 months in, he's having trouble with his house. He was here in the DC area. He was having trouble with his house. He was really stressed. He couldn't find a job. And I had to talk to him. I said, look, your network gave you that opportunity without a degree, but those jobs now, outside of having a network, having somebody create a job for you, require a degree. Like you have to get your degree, and you're not going to find that job again. Like that was a once in a lifetime opportunity that someone was really willing to create that role for you based on the relationships you had at the time. And so it's hard. I had to tell that Sergeant Major, Marine Corps Sergeant Major, like you have to go back for your degree. And that he was probably a year out of work to get it. And what's he going to do in the meantime? So I will tell people that, you have to really talk to mentors and find out, do you need additional education to progress years down the road, not just now? Here we go. So we've got, I don't know exactly what I want to do when I retire and transition out. What's your advice on narrowing a career and company down? So my advice, I think it's Katie, would be to just schedule conversations. Like get on LinkedIn, search for the titles of the roles that you want: operations manager, project manager, HR manager, whatever. Click people, and then filter by past company, add all the branches of services, and start reaching out to people to connect, ask to join their professional network. If they're veterans, ask for a short phone call to learn more about what they do and make it about them. And if you do those conversations over and over and over again, you'll start to narrow down. You'll mark off some of those things you don't want to do, and you will really start to identify what you want to do. And then once you have that, you can focus on those specific roles, those specific companies, because there's great companies out there that you've never heard of. And then you'll have the supportive network to create those opportunities for you. And yes, Gene, I was looking for a lobbyist. All right, everybody. I try to never go over 30 to 40 minutes on these. Thanks for joining us today. I hope you got some value in this conversation. Ultimately, what I'm going to share with you, that life after the military revolves around having a network and knowing people. What makes me different than the Sergeant Major Quinn that was 5 years ago, just getting started on LinkedIn, is, if I want to have a conversation with people at a company, I know someone, or I can get to them because of my network. If I want to do business with a company, I can have a conversation with those companies. And in fact, my company doesn't have an outbound salesperson at all right now, because these companies are coming to us because we've built trust and relationships at scale across, the world, really. And I've encouraged my team to continue to network as well. And so what I'll share with all of you is that networking is not a transition skill, it's a life skill. And that, everything that you want to accomplish outside of the military is going to be based on your reputation and your network. And so, focus on really expanding your network when you get out. Really make a commitment to, daily spending a few minutes on staying engaged, sharing updates to your network, expanding your network. So when you need it, it's there. It's always better to need and not have, and have and not need. And the last thing I'm going to leave you with is that there are a lot of people who get their dream jobs in these amazing companies, and they feel like they don't need the network anymore. And I think what we saw last year is almost overnight, 20 million people in these incredible companies that no one saw were going to happen. Entire industries went down, and like 20 million people were laid off in like a month. And so what I'm going to share with you is, you never know what life is going to throw at you. And so networking is a life skill. Building relationships is a life skill. And the best way to do that is be authentic in your conversations, be authentic in your shares, professional authentic, and realize that, not everybody's going to like you. I know that my style does not resonate with a lot of people, and I'm okay with that, because ultimately what's important to me is that I surround myself with a supportive community that shares backgrounds and interests similar to mine. And where I invest my time is in people that I feel like I know, because they've been sharing content. They've been engaging on my content. They've been active and doing the work necessary for their, transition. And I feel a connection to them. And so keep networking. To me, it's the most important part of your transition. And understand that if you take a job when you get out because you started late, I got it. You can always find a better another job, right? So 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, a year down the road, you're not locked into that employer. If you get a better job, you can leave. And that's what happened to me. That first job, I outgrew it, and I leveraged my network to find that next opportunity while I still kept that first job, because it's always better to be in a job hunt when you already have a job. All right. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to get off before we hit that 60-minute live session. I hope this was beneficial. Follow me on LinkedIn. Follow Hire Military. Reach out to Lucy and Kate. Check out those jobs. Look, my goal in life is to make the transition better for service members, veterans, and military spouses. This is my life, and the people on my team feel the same way. So please understand that that is our goal, and we'll do our best to support you. And nothing we ever do involves a service member paying or a military spouse. All right. Have a great day, everyone. Happy Friday. We go to my brand here. I wish I had Olivia here doing this. All right. Bye, everybody.